I never thought a pile of snow would turn me into a criminal mastermind, but when the Pinewood Estates HOA slapped me with a $300 fine for something Mother Nature did, I decided war was the only appropriate response. My name is Vincent Yates, and I moved to Pinewood Estates in Boulder, Colorado 3 years ago with my wife Sarah. The neighborhood seemed perfect at first, nestled right up against the Flatirons with gorgeous mountain views and well-maintained streets. We bought a 4-bedroom colonial on Aspen Drive, paid cash, and thought we had found our forever home. The HOA seemed reasonable during our initial meeting with the real estate agent. Monthly dues were only $75, and the rules appeared straightforward. Keep your lawn neat, no outrageous paint colors, no parking boats in driveways. Standard suburban stuff. What nobody told us was that the HOA president, a woman named Brenda Carmichael, treated the neighborhood covenants like they were the 10 Commandments handed down from God himself. Brenda was 53 years old with a platinum blonde bob that never moved in the wind, designer athleisure, where that cost more than my monthly mortgage payment used to be, and an expression that suggested she perpetually smelled something rotten. She lived in the largest house in the development, a sprawling 6,000-square-foot monstrosity on the corner lot, and she drove a white Mercedes SUV with a custom license plate that read, HOA Boss. The first winter we lived there, I learned that Colorado snowstorms were no joke. We got hit with a massive blizzard in February that dumped 2 feet of snow overnight. I woke up at 5 in the morning to the sound of snowplows rumbling through the neighborhood, their yellow lights flashing through our bedroom window. I got up, made coffee, and watched through the front window as the county plow truck made its way down Aspen Drive. The driver, a grizzled guy named Frank who I had chatted with a few times when he was working, did what every plow driver does. He pushed the snow from the street onto the edges where it formed massive white barriers along the sidewalks and front lawns. My yard ended up with a pile roughly 4 feet high and maybe 10 feet long right at the edge of my property. It was annoying but completely normal. Everyone on the street had the same situation. I spent the next 3 hours shoveling out my driveway and creating a path to the mailbox. My back was screaming by the time I finished, and my fingers felt like frozen sausages despite the insulated gloves. Sarah brought me hot chocolate and told me I was an idiot for not hiring the kid down the street to do it. She was probably right. 2 days later, I found a certified letter in my mailbox. The return address was Pinewood Estates HOA. My stomach dropped even before I opened it. Dear Mr. Yates, the letter began in cold, formal language that immediately put me on edge. It has come to our attention that your property at 4782 Aspen Drive is in violation of Section 7.3 of the Pinewood Estates Covenants, Conditions, and Restrictions. Specifically, you have allowed snow accumulation exceeding 18 inches to remain on your front lawn for more than 48 hours following a weather event. This creates an unsightly appearance that diminishes property values for all residents. You are hereby assessed a fine of $300, payable within 30 days. Failure to remit payment will result in additional penalties and possible legal action. Additionally, you must remove the excess snow within 72 hours or face further fines of $100 per day. The letter was signed by Brenda Carmichael in aggressive, slashing handwriting that looked like it could cut paper. I read the letter 3 times, certain I was missing something. They were fining me for snow that the county plow had deposited on my property. Snow that literally every house on the street had in roughly equal amounts. I walked outside and looked at my neighbors' lawns. Sure enough, everyone had similar piles. I walked down to my neighbor Tom's house and knocked on his door. Tom Henderson was a retired aerospace engineer in his 60s, a reasonable guy who had lived in Pinewood Estates for 15 years. He answered the door holding a beer despite it being only 2 in the afternoon. "You get one of these." I held up the letter. Tom's face darkened. "Yeah, we all did. Everyone on Aspen, Birch, and Cedar, about 40 houses total. This is insane. The county plow put that snow there. What are we supposed to do?" Tom took a long drink of his beer. "Brenda says it's our responsibility to remove snow from our entire property line, including snow deposited by plows. She's citing some obscure clause in the covenants about maintaining curb appeal. That's got to be illegal, probably. But fighting it means hiring a lawyer, and that costs way more than $300. Most people will just pay. Are you going to pay?" Tom looked at me like I had asked if he was going to set himself on fire. "Hell no. I'm 70 years old, I have a bad back, and I'm not going to shovel snow that I didn't put there. Let her try to take me to court." I went home and showed Sarah the letter. She read it carefully, her expression shifting from confusion to anger. "This is absolutely ridiculous," she said. "Can they even do this?" Apparently they think they can. Sarah had a law degree, though she had stopped practicing when we moved to Colorado to focus on her painting. She pulled out her laptop and started researching HOA law in Colorado. After an hour, she looked up with a grim expression. "Technically, they can fine you for violations of the CC and Articus. And the covenants do say property owners are responsible for maintaining their lots in accordance with community standards. But there's nothing specific about snow removal, and I think a judge would probably side with homeowners on this, since the snow was deposited by a government vehicle. The problem is, like Tom said, it would cost more to fight than to just pay." "I'm not paying," I said. Sarah knew that tone in my voice. She closed her laptop. "What are you planning?" "I don't know yet. But I'm not giving Brenda Carmichael $300 for doing nothing wrong." The next HOA meeting was scheduled for the following Thursday at 7 p.m. in the Clubhouse. The Pinewood Estates Clubhouse was Brenda's pride and joy. A 2,000-square-foot building with a full kitchen, meeting room, and small gym. It sat at the front entrance of the neighborhood, right off the main road, and Brenda had spent thousands of HOA dollars renovating it the previous year over the objections of many residents who thought the money should go toward fixing the deteriorating playground equipment. I showed up to the meeting at 6:55. The parking lot was packed. Apparently, I wasn't the only person upset about the snow fines. I recognized at least 30 neighbors crowded into the meeting room, many holding their certified letters. The energy in the room was tense and angry. Brenda sat at the front behind a folding table with 2 other board members, Susan Wright, the treasurer, and Mark Phillips, the secretary. Susan was a mousy woman in her 40s who seemed terrified of confrontation. Mark was a middle-aged accountant who spent most meetings checking his phone. Brenda called the meeting to order at exactly 7 p.m. by banging a wooden gavel on the table like she was a federal judge. "We have a full agenda tonight," she announced. "But first, I want to address the snow removal issue since I know many of you have questions." "Questions?" Tom Henderson stood up in the back row. "We have more than questions, Brenda. We have a major problem with you fining people for snow that the county put on our lawns." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Brenda's expression didn't change. "The covenants are clear. Each property owner is responsible for maintaining their lot according to community standards. Excessive snow accumulation is unsightly and reflects poorly on our neighborhood." "The county plow put it there," someone shouted. "That's irrelevant," Brenda said coldly. "The snow is on your property, therefore it's your responsibility. If you have a problem with the county's plowing practices, take it up with them. But you will maintain your properties according to HOA standards or face consequences. I stood up. Brenda, with all due respect, this is insane. You've lived here through plenty of winters. The plows always leave snow on the lawns. Are you going to fine everyone every single time it snows? Brenda's eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Mr. Yates, is it? If the snow exceeds the limits outlined in our covenants and remains for more than 48 hours, then yes, fines will be assessed. I suggest you invest in a good shovel. Where exactly in the covenants does it say anything about 18 inches of snow? I pulled out my copy of the CC and Articus that I had printed that afternoon. Brenda's smile was thin and sharp. Section 7.3, subsection B, paragraph 4, seasonal accumulation of organic or inorganic materials. I flipped through the pages. This section is about lawn clippings and leaf piles. It says nothing about snow. Snow is an inorganic material that accumulates seasonally, Brenda said. The language is clear to anyone with basic reading comprehension skills. The room erupted. People were shouting, half of them on their feet. Brenda banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. I will have order, or I'll adjourn this meeting. Tom Henderson pushed his way to the front. You can't just reinterpret the covenants to mean whatever you want, Brenda. This is tyrannical. The board has discretion to interpret and enforce the covenants as we see fit. If you don't like it, you're free to sell your home and leave Pinewood Estates. That statement triggered an even bigger uproar. Susan Wright looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Mark Phillips was definitely playing a game on his phone. I fought my way through the crowd to stand directly in front of Brenda. You realize that if you enforce this fine, every single person in this room is going to fight it, right? You'll spend years in court. Brenda stood up, and despite being probably 5'4", she somehow projected an aura of menace. Mr. Yates, I've been the president of this HOA for 8 years. I've dealt with troublemakers before. They either fall in line or they leave. There is no third option. Your fine stands. You have 30 days to pay or we'll place a lien on your property. She banged the gavel one final time. This meeting is adjourned. I left the clubhouse furious. Sarah was waiting up when I got home. How bad was it? Worse than I imagined. She's completely unreasonable. So what are you going to do? I sat down heavily on the couch. I honestly don't know, but I'm not paying that fine. 3 weeks passed. I ignored the fine. So did Tom and about 20 other neighbors. The rest apparently decided $300 wasn't worth the fight and paid up. I started receiving threatening letters every few days. First from Brenda directly, then from the HOA's lawyer, a firm in Denver that specialized in covenant enforcement. The letters escalated in tone, threatening liens, foreclosure, and legal action. Sarah was getting nervous. We had worked hard to own our home free and clear, and the idea of losing it over a dispute about snow seemed absurd. But HOAs in Colorado had significant legal power. Then March arrived, and with it, another massive snowstorm. The forecast called for 18 to 24 inches over 2 days. I watched the weather reports with a growing sense of both dread and opportunity. The snow started falling on a Tuesday afternoon. By Wednesday morning, we had 2 feet of fresh powder. The county plows came through around 6 a.m., and just like before, they deposited massive piles of snow along every front lawn on Aspen Drive. I was drinking coffee and staring at the new snow pile on my lawn when an idea hit me. A terrible, wonderful, completely insane idea. I called Tom Henderson. You know anyone who drives a plow truck? Why, just answer the question. My nephew does snow removal. He's got a truck with a plow attachment. Why can he get access to a bigger plow, like a commercial one? There was a long pause. Vincent, what are you planning? Something incredibly stupid. Are you in? Tom started laughing, a deep belly laugh that went on for a solid 30 seconds. Oh, I am absolutely in. Let me make some calls. 2 hours later, I was sitting in a Denny's off Highway 36 with Tom and his nephew, a 30-year-old guy named Jake who ran a landscaping business in the summer and did snow removal in the winter. Jake had the weathered look of someone who worked outside year-round and the slightly manic energy of a person who thrived on chaos. So let me get this straight, Jake said, dumping more hot sauce on his eggs. You want me to plow all the snow from the neighborhood streets onto the HOA clubhouse? Not all the snow, just enough to make a point, Jake grinned. How much trouble are we talking about here? Potentially a lot, I admitted. The clubhouse is HOA property, so technically it might be considered vandalism or property damage. But it's just snow, Tom interjected. It'll melt. We're not actually destroying anything. Jake pointed his fork at Tom. I like the way you think, old man, and I definitely don't like HOAs. One tried to fine my mom for having a vegetable garden they claimed was unsightly. You know what's actually unsightly? Starving because groceries cost too much. So you'll do it? I asked. Hell yeah, I'll do it. But I'm going to need help. We're talking about moving a massive amount of snow. My truck can handle it, but it'll take hours, and someone needs to be lookout in case cops show up or Brenda drives by. Over the next hour, we planned our operation like we were robbing a bank. Jake had access to a heavy-duty commercial plow through a buddy who worked for a private snow removal company. The truck was capable of moving significantly more snow than a standard residential plow. We decided to do it on Friday night when the next storm was forecasted to arrive. The new snow would provide cover for our operation, and most people would be inside watching TV or sleeping. Tom recruited 3 other neighbors who had been fined. Mike Chen, a software engineer, Barbara Foster, a retired teacher, and David Martinez, who owned a construction company. Everyone was completely on board once they heard the plan. Friday arrived with darkening skies and dropping temperatures. The weather service was calling for another 8 to 12 inches overnight. Perfect. Jake showed up at my house at 8 p.m. driving an absolute monster of a truck. The plow blade was easily 10 feet wide, and the truck itself looked like it could drive through a brick wall without noticing. This is Big Bertha, Jake said proudly, patting the hood. She moves some serious snow. Our crew assembled in my driveway. Everyone was dressed in dark clothes and ski masks, which in retrospect made us look like the world's most suburban terrorist cell. Okay, here's how this works, I said. Jake is going to start at the far end of the neighborhood and work his way toward the clubhouse. Tom and I will follow in my truck to act as lookouts. Mike, Barbara, and David, you 3 are stationed at different points around the neighborhood. If you see Brenda or anyone who looks like trouble, you call immediately. Everyone has everyone else's numbers. They all nodded. This is insane, Barbara said, but she was grinning. Absolutely insane, I agreed. Everyone good, David raised his hand. What if we get caught? Then we're probably going to get sued, arrested, or both. So let's not get caught. We moved out. Jake fired up Big Bertha with a roar that sounded like a dragon waking up. The plow blade dropped with a heavy clang and we were off. Jake started on Cedar Drive, the street that ran parallel to Aspen. He drove slowly, methodically, pushing the existing snow piles from the lawns and street edges into the middle of the road, creating a growing wave of white that built up in front of the plow blade. It was actually impressive to watch. Each pass accumulated more snow, and Jake guided it with the skill of an artist. Tom and I followed at a distance, watching for any signs of trouble. The neighborhood was quiet. Most houses had lights on inside, but nobody seemed to notice a plow truck working in the falling snow. To any casual observer, it probably just looked like routine snow removal. Jake worked his way through cedar, then birch, then aspen. The snow pile in front of his blade was now enormous, maybe 7 feet high and spreading the full width of the plow blade. He had to drive slowly to keep it from spilling off the sides. My phone buzzed. It was Barbara. Brenda just drove past me heading north toward Main Street. "You're clear for now." "Copy that," I said, feeling like an idiot for using military terminology during a snow-based prank war. Jake turned onto Spruce Drive, which led directly to the clubhouse entrance. This was it. The point of no return. He accelerated slightly, the truck's engine growling. The clubhouse came into view, lit up by its exterior lights. It sat maybe 20 yards back from the street, with a circular driveway and a concrete walkway leading to the front entrance. Jake swung the truck into the clubhouse parking lot and lined up his approach. The snow pile in front of the plow was absolutely massive now, probably containing several tons of compacted snow and ice. "Do it," I said into my phone. Jake floored it. Big Bertha surged forward, and the blade dumped its entire payload directly in front of the clubhouse entrance. The snow didn't just pile up. It exploded outward and upward, forming a wall that completely blocked the front door and extended up to the bottom of the first-floor windows. Jake didn't stop there. He reversed, drove around, and made another pass, adding another layer. Then another. By the time he finished, the clubhouse entrance was buried under what had to be 10 feet of densely packed snow. The windows were partially covered. The front door was completely invisible. It looked like an avalanche had hit the building. Jake pulled up next to my truck, his window down and the biggest smile I had ever seen on anyone's face. "That," he said, "was the most fun I've had in years." Tom was laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. I was somewhere between elation and absolute terror at what we had just done. "We should get out of here," I said. We scattered. Jake drove Big Bertha back to his friend's lot. The rest of us went home. I walked into my house at 10:30, stripped off my wet clothes and got into the shower, half expecting to hear sirens at any moment. Sarah was waiting when I got out. "Did you do something stupid?" she asked. "Extremely stupid." "Are we going to get arrested?" "Possibly," she sighed. Was it at least satisfying? I thought about the look on Brenda's face when she saw the clubhouse tomorrow morning. It's going to be. I barely slept. Every car that drove past sounded like a police cruiser. Every noise was Brenda pounding on my door with a warrant. But nothing happened. Saturday morning arrived cold and bright. The new snow had stopped around 3 a.m., leaving another 6 inches of fresh powder over everything. I made coffee and deliberately did not check my phone or email. At 7:30, my phone exploded with text messages. Tom, Mike, Barbara, David, Jake, and about a dozen other neighbors all sent variations of the same thing. Photos of the clubhouse buried in snow. Someone had added the pictures to the neighborhood Facebook group. The comments were hilarious. Some people were outraged, demanding that whoever did this be found and punished. Others were openly celebrating. One comment from a guy named Robert who lived on Oak Street said simply, "This is the greatest thing I've ever seen." At 8 a.m., my doorbell rang. My heart nearly exploded out of my chest. I looked through the peephole and saw Brenda Carmichael standing on my porch, her face the color of a fire engine. I considered not answering, but that would only delay the inevitable. I opened the door. "Good morning, Brenda." "Don't you dare good morning me, Vincent Yates. I know you did this." "Did what?" "Don't play stupid. The clubhouse is buried in snow. Someone used a commercial plow to deliberately destroy HOA property. Snow isn't destruction. It's a natural weather event. Maybe you should file a complaint with Mother Nature. Brenda's eyes were practically shooting lasers. This was intentional vandalism. I'm calling the police and I'm having you arrested. On what evidence? Did anyone see me do anything? You're the one who's been fighting the fines. You're the one who disrupted the meeting. This has your fingerprints all over it. I was home all night. My wife can confirm that. As for the clubhouse, maybe the county plow made a mistake. You should take it up with them. After all, property owners are responsible for snow removal, right? Sounds like the HOA needs to invest in a good shovel. I closed the door in her face. Sarah was standing in the hallway, her eyes wide. "You're going to get us killed," she said. "Probably." 2 hours later, a Boulder County Sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. This time I was genuinely nervous. The deputy was a young guy, probably late 20s, with a professional but not unfriendly demeanor. "Mr. Yates, I'm Deputy Collins. I need to ask you some questions about an incident at the Pinewood Estates clubhouse." "Of course. What happened?" "Someone apparently used a plow truck to dump a large amount of snow against the building. The HOA president filed a report. She seems to think you were involved." "Why would she think that?" Deputy Collins pulled out a small notebook. "She says you've been in conflict with the HOA over snow removal fines." "That's true. The HOA fined me $300 for snow that the county plow deposited on my lawn. I think the fine is unreasonable, but that doesn't mean I vandalized anything." "Where were you last night between 8 p.m. and midnight?" "Here at home. My wife and I watched a movie and went to bed around 11. "Can anyone verify that?" Sarah appeared beside me. "I can. We were together all evening." Deputy Collins made notes. "Have you had any contact with snow removal services recently?" "No, I shovel my own driveway." "Do you own or have access to a commercial plow truck?" "No." The deputy looked at me carefully. He wasn't stupid. He knew I was probably lying, but he also didn't have any evidence. "Mr. Yates, if you did have anything to do with this, I'd encourage you to come forward. Vandalism charges can be serious, but cooperation goes a long way." "I understand, Deputy, but I didn't vandalize anything." "If someone plowed snow onto HOA property, that sounds like a dispute between the HOA and whoever did the plowing." Deputy Collins gave me a long look, then handed me his card. "If you think of anything that might be helpful, give me a call." After he left, Sarah grabbed my arm. "Vincent, this is getting serious. A sheriff's deputy just questioned you." "I know, but he doesn't have evidence. Brenda can suspect all she wants, but she can't prove anything." "What if they find Jake? What if someone saw the truck?" "Jake knows to keep quiet, and it was dark and snowing." "Nobody saw anything." Sarah didn't look convinced, but she didn't push it further. Over the next few days, the neighborhood was consumed by the snow incident. The Facebook group turned into a war zone between people who thought the whole thing was hilarious and people who were outraged by the disrespect to HOA property. Brenda posted multiple angry messages demanding information and threatening legal action against anyone who helped the perpetrator. The clubhouse snow pile became a local attraction. People drove by to take pictures. Someone built a snowman on top of it. Another person stuck a sign in it that read, "Brenda's Karma." Meanwhile, I received another letter from the HOA. This one informed me that I now owed $600. The original $300 for the first snow fine, plus another $300 for the second storm. Additionally, because I had failed to pay within 30 days, late fees and interest had been added, bringing my total to $750. I threw the letter in the trash. A week after the clubhouse incident, I got a call from Tom Henderson. "We need to talk." Can you come over?" I found Tom, Mike, Barbara, and David gathered in Tom's living room. Everyone looked worried. "What's going on?" I asked. Tom handed me a piece of paper. "Everyone in the crew got one of these this morning." It was a subpoena. The HOA was suing me, Tom, Mike, Barbara, David, and Jake for property damage, vandalism, and conspiracy. They were seeking $50,000 in damages and legal fees. $50,000, I said, for snow. They're claiming the snow damaged the clubhouse structure, that they had to hire emergency removal services, and that the incident caused emotional distress to board members, Mike explained. He was reading from his own copy of the suit. "This is insane." "It's also very real," Barbara said quietly. "I can't afford a legal battle. I'm on a fixed income." The room fell silent. I felt like the world's biggest idiot. In my anger at Brenda, I had dragged these good people into a mess that could bankrupt them. "I'm sorry," I said. "This is my fault. I'll talk to a lawyer and figure out how to take full responsibility. I'll keep you all out of it." Tom shook his head. "Don't be stupid, Vincent. We all knew what we were doing. We're in this together." "Tom's right," David added. "Brenda has been terrorizing this neighborhood for years. Maybe it's time someone actually fought back properly." "What are you suggesting?" David smiled. "I'm suggesting we don't just defend ourselves. We go on offense." Over the next 2 hours, David laid out a plan. He had a lawyer friend who specialized in HOA disputes. More importantly, David had been quietly documenting HOA violations for the past 3 years. Ever since Brenda had fined him $1,000 for replacing his roof, a color she deemed not in keeping with neighborhood aesthetics, even though the color was explicitly approved in the covenants. David had records of misappropriated HOA funds, fines that had been selectively enforced, and evidence that Brenda had been using HOA money for personal expenses. He had been waiting for the right moment to use it. "This is our moment," David said. "She's suing us. Fine. We countersue. We go after her for breach of fiduciary duty, embezzlement, and harassment." "Will it work?" I asked. Mike, who had been quiet, spoke up. "I've been doing some research. Colorado HOA law actually has pretty strong protections for homeowners. And if we can prove Brenda has been misusing her authority and HOA funds, we might be able to get her removed from the board entirely." We agreed to meet with David's lawyer friend, a woman named Patricia Walsh who practiced in Denver. Patricia came out to Tom's house the following Saturday and listened to our story while taking detailed notes. Patricia was in her 50s, with short gray hair and the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who had spent decades fighting in courtrooms. When we finished talking, she sat back and smiled. "This is the most entertaining HOA case I've heard in years," she said. "And yes, I think we have a strong countersuit. The snow prank was stupid and probably did technically violate property laws, but the way Brenda has been running this HOA is potentially criminal." "Criminal?" Barbara asked. Patricia nodded. "If she's been using HOA funds for personal expenses without board approval, that's embezzlement. If she's been selectively enforcing covenants to target specific homeowners, that's harassment and possibly discrimination. And if the board votes were done improperly or without proper notice, those fines aren't even legally valid." "So what do?" I asked. "First, we file a motion to dismiss the HOA's suit as frivolous. Second, we file a countersuit for the issues I mentioned. Third, we request a full audit of HOA finances going back at least 5 years. Fourth, we file complaints with the Colorado HOA Regulatory Board. And fifth, if the evidence supports it, we refer the matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges." "How much is this going to cost?" Tom asked. I'll do it on contingency for the countersuit. If we win, my fees come from the settlement. For the criminal referral, there's no cost. You'll each need to chip in for filing fees and costs, probably around $2,000 each. We all looked at each other. It was a lot of money, but compared to $50,000, it was manageable. I'm in, I said. Everyone else agreed. Patricia got to work immediately. She filed our response to the HOA lawsuit, along with a comprehensive countersuit that was 43 pages long and detailed every possible violation Brenda had committed over the past 8 years. She also submitted a formal request for all HOA financial records going back 7 years. Brenda lost her mind. She sent a mass email to the entire neighborhood calling us liars, troublemakers, and criminals. She demanded an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the baseless attacks against her leadership. The meeting was scheduled for a Thursday night. Patricia advised us not to attend, but I couldn't resist. I wanted to see Brenda's face when she realized she was in serious trouble. The clubhouse was packed. The snow had finally been removed from the entrance, though there was still a massive dirty pile in the parking lot that would probably stay there until June. Every seat was taken, and people lined the walls. The tension in the room was electric. Brenda started the meeting by launching into a prepared speech about the lawsuit, painting herself as a victim who was being attacked for simply trying to maintain community standards. "These individuals," she said, gesturing toward where I sat with Tom and the others, "have shown complete disrespect for this community. They vandalized HOA property, they refused to pay legitimate fines, and now they're making false accusations to avoid accountability." Someone in the back row stood up. It was Jennifer Park, a lawyer who lived on Maple Street. "Brenda, I've reviewed the countersuit. The allegations are serious and well documented. If even half of what's claimed is true, you've been violating your fiduciary duties for years." Brenda's face flushed. "Those documents are fabricated. Then you'll have no problem providing the HOA financial records as requested," Jennifer said coolly. "That information is confidential." "No, it's not. Colorado law requires HOA financial records to be available to homeowners upon request. The fact that you're refusing to provide them is itself a violation." Other people started speaking up. It turned out that a lot of residents had grievances with Brenda, but had been too afraid to speak publicly. Now, with a lawsuit in play and evidence of financial misconduct being presented, the floodgates opened. One person complained about fines for holiday decorations that supposedly violated aesthetic guidelines, even though similar decorations on Brenda's own property went unpunished. Another described how the HOA had paid $20,000 to renovate the clubhouse kitchen, but the contractor who did the work was Brenda's brother-in-law, and there had been no competitive bidding process. Brenda tried to maintain control, banging her gavel and demanding order, but it was pointless. The meeting devolved into chaos, with people shouting accusations and demanding Brenda's resignation. Finally, Susan Wright, the treasurer, stood up. She looked terrified but determined. "I need to say something," Susan said, her voice shaking. "Brenda has been pressuring me for years to approve expenses without proper documentation. She told me it was normal that HOAs operated on trust, but I've been keeping my own records and I think there are serious problems." The room went silent. Susan continued. "Last year alone, Brenda submitted expense reimbursements totaling over $15,000. The receipts were often vague or missing. When I questioned them, she threatened to have me removed from the board." Brenda's face went from red to white. "Susan, you're fired as treasurer." "You can't fire me," Susan said. "The board position is elected. Only a vote of the full membership can remove me. Jennifer Park stood up again. I move that we hold an immediate vote of no confidence in Brenda Carmichael as HOA president. Second, someone shouted. Brenda tried to shut it down, but it was too late. The vote was called. Out of approximately 60 homeowners present, 54 voted to remove Brenda from her position as president. Only 6 voted to keep her, and I was pretty sure most of those were her immediate family members. Brenda stood at the front table, her face a mask of fury and disbelief. She grabbed her purse and papers and stormed out of the clubhouse without another word. Mark Phillips, the secretary, just shrugged and said, "Well, I guess we need to elect a new president." Tom was voted in as interim president that night. One of his first acts was to formally withdraw the lawsuit against me, Jake, and the others. His second act was to vote to rescind all the snow-related fines. But the story didn't end there. Patricia Walsh submitted all the financial records Susan provided to the Colorado HOA Regulatory Board and the Boulder County District Attorney's Office. An investigation was opened. Over the next 3 months, investigators uncovered a systematic pattern of financial misconduct. Brenda had been using HOA funds to pay for personal expenses. Her gardening service, meals at expensive restaurants that she claimed were board meetings, even a vacation to Hawaii that she expensed as research for community enhancement. In total, she had embezzled over $70,000 from the HOA over a 6-year period. On a Wednesday morning in June, I was working in my home office when I saw 2 Boulder County Sheriff's vehicles pull up to Brenda's house. Deputies emerged and knocked on her door. 10 minutes later, Brenda was led out in handcuffs. She was formally charged with embezzlement, theft, fraud, and misconduct in office. The charges were serious enough that the district attorney was seeking prison time rather than just probation. The neighborhood watched the saga unfold with a mixture of satisfaction and shock. Nobody had liked Brenda, but seeing her arrested and publicly humiliated was still jarring. The criminal trial took place in September. Patricia referred us to a criminal attorney who agreed to provide victim impact statements on behalf of the HOA and affected homeowners. I attended the trial for the sentencing hearing. Brenda's lawyer tried to argue that she had made accounting mistakes, that there was no criminal intent, and that she had dedicated years of volunteer service to the community. The judge wasn't buying it. "Miss Carmichael," Judge Raymond Torres said from the bench, "you held a position of trust. Homeowners relied on you to manage their collective funds responsibly. Instead, you treated the HOA as your personal bank account. Your actions weren't mistakes. They were deliberate theft carried out over multiple years. The court finds you guilty on all counts." Brenda was sentenced to 18 months in county jail, followed by 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to make full restitution of the $70,000, plus interest and penalties. As the bailiff led her away, Brenda looked back at the courtroom gallery. Her eyes found mine. For a moment, I expected to see anger or hatred. Instead, I saw something else: defeat, and maybe a tiny flicker of understanding that she had brought this entirely on herself. The Pinewood Estates HOA underwent a complete transformation after Brenda's removal. Tom served as president for a year, then handed the position to Jennifer Park, who brought actual legal expertise and common sense to the role. The covenants were revised to remove vague and punitive provisions. Fines were reduced and made reasonable. Most importantly, a system of checks and balances was implemented to prevent any single person from wielding the kind of unchecked authority Brenda had possessed. The snow removal clause was specifically revised to clarify that homeowners were only responsible for snow they created or could reasonably control. Snow deposited by county plows or natural accumulation beyond normal levels was explicitly excluded. The new clause passed with a unanimous vote. Jake became the neighborhood's unofficial snow removal hero. After the whole incident became public, several residents hired him for driveway plowing, and his business expanded. He bought a second truck and hired 2 employees. Last I heard, he was making excellent money and considering expanding into landscaping services for commercial properties. As for the clubhouse, Tom organized a volunteer crew to repaint it and make some improvements. The neighborhood actually came together in a way I had never seen before. People who had been isolated and intimidated under Brenda's regime suddenly felt empowered to participate in community decisions. Sarah and I stayed in Pinewood Estates. The neighborhood we had almost left became genuinely enjoyable. We made real friends with Tom, Mike, Barbara, David, and others who had stood up to Brenda's tyranny. We hosted barbecues in the summer and holiday parties in the winter. The HOA dues were used for actual improvements, fixing the playground, repaving streets, organizing community events. One evening in December, about a year after the snow incident, Tom and I were standing in my driveway watching the first significant snowfall of the season. The county plow had just gone through, leaving its usual pile along the curb. "You going to plow that onto anything?" Tom asked with a grin. I laughed. "I think I learned my lesson about vigilante snow removal. Did you though? Because I seem to remember you saying the whole thing was incredibly satisfying." It was, but the aftermath was terrifying. "I'm good with just being a regular homeowner now." Tom clapped me on the shoulder. "You're a good man, Vincent. You stood up when it mattered. Not a lot of people have that in them." "I had help, a lot of help, true, but you started it. You refused to back down." We stood in comfortable silence, watching the snow fall and listening to the sounds of the neighborhood. Kids sledding somewhere down the block, someone's wind chimes tinkling in the breeze, the distant sound of another plow truck working the next street over. "Think Brenda ever regrets it?" I asked. Tom considered the question. "I think Brenda regrets getting caught. I don't know if she regrets what she did. Some people are just wired wrong. They see power as something to be used against others, not for the benefit of everyone." That's pretty philosophical for a retired engineer. I contain multitudes. Sarah called from the house that dinner was ready. I said goodbye to Tom and headed inside, pausing at the door to look back at my snow-covered lawn. The pile from the plow was maybe 3 feet high, completely normal and completely manageable. The fine that had started everything, the $300 that Brenda had demanded for snow I didn't create, seemed absurd in retrospect. But it had revealed something important. That ordinary people could fight back against petty tyranny, that communities could come together when pushed too far, and that even the most powerful HOA president was still subject to the law. I never did pay that original fine. It was officially voided as part of Tom's first actions as interim president. I still have the letter somewhere in a box in my office, a reminder of how quickly a minor annoyance can escalate into a full-scale neighborhood war. Would I do it all again, knowing how it turned out? Absolutely. Would I recommend that other people respond to unreasonable HOA fines by burying the clubhouse in snow? Probably not. The whole thing could have gone sideways in a dozen different ways. We were lucky that Brenda's own corruption provided a path to victory. If she had been clean, we might have ended up in serious legal trouble. But sometimes, when the system fails you, when the rules are being weaponized by small-minded bureaucrats with too much power and too little oversight, the only option is to fight back. Not with violence, not with destruction, but with creativity, determination, and a willingness to stand up even when it's risky. The snow eventually melted, as snow always does. The clubhouse was fine. The neighborhood was better than ever, and Brenda Carmichael spent a year and a half in county jail thinking about her choices. The system worked eventually, but it needed a push. It needed someone willing to take a stand, even if that stand involved a commercial snow plow and a spectacularly ill-advised middle-of-the-night operation. I learned a lot from the experience. I learned that HOAs have incredible power, but also significant legal obligations. I learned that financial misconduct is shockingly common in volunteer-run organizations with minimal oversight. I learned that neighbors who seem disconnected and uninvolved can become passionate allies when given the right cause. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the most satisfying revenge isn't revenge at all. It's justice. It's accountability. It's watching someone who abused their power face real consequences. The criminal case against Brenda made local news. Several outlets ran stories about HOA corruption and homeowner rights. Patricia Walsh used the publicity to build her practice, and she now specializes in representing homeowners against abusive HOAs. She's won several significant cases and has become something of a crusader for HOA reform in Colorado. The Colorado legislature even passed new regulations requiring greater financial transparency and stricter oversight for HOAs. Some people called it the Pinewood Estates Law, though the official name was much more bureaucratic. But we knew the truth. Our small neighborhood drama had sparked a statewide conversation about power, accountability, and the sometimes absurd world of homeowners associations. Winter came and went several more times. Each time it snowed, I shoveled my driveway and ignored the piles the county plow left on my lawn. Nobody fined me. Nobody complained. The HOA became what it was supposed to be: a boring administrative body that maintained common areas and enforced reasonable standards that everyone agreed upon. Brenda was released from jail after serving 13 months with good behavior. She moved away immediately, selling her massive house for less than market value in her rush to leave. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she relocated to Arizona, presumably to a community without an HOA where she could live without anyone making rules about her property. I hope she found peace. I hope she learned from her mistakes. But mostly, I hope she never runs an HOA again. As for me, Vincent Yates, the guy who started a war over a snow pile and accidentally uncovered a six-figure embezzlement scheme, I'm just a regular homeowner now. I pay my dues on time, I participate in community meetings when I feel like it, and I shovel my own driveway. But I keep Jake's phone number saved in my contacts, just in case. Because you never know when you might need a guy with a plow truck and a complete disregard for conventional wisdom. The snow pile that started everything has been buried under dozens of other snow piles. The clubhouse has been repainted twice. Brenda's house has new owners who seem lovely and blessedly normal. Life in Pinewood Estates is peaceful, boring, and exactly what suburban life should be. But on cold winter nights, when the snow is falling and the plows are running, I sometimes stand at my window and remember that one perfect moment when Big Bertha dumped a mountain of snow against the clubhouse entrance and everything changed. I remember the fear and exhilaration. I remember standing in Tom's driveway planning our ridiculous heist like we were characters in a movie. I remember the look on Deputy Collins's face when he questioned me, knowing I was lying but unable to prove it. I remember Brenda being led away in handcuffs, the end of an era of petty tyranny. Mostly, I remember that ordinary people, when pushed far enough and united by common cause, can accomplish extraordinary things, even if those things involve commercial snow removal equipment and a profound disrespect for HOA property boundaries. The moral of the story isn't that you should bury your HOA clubhouse in snow when they fine you unreasonably. The moral is that you should stand up to injustice, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's risky, and even when everyone tells you to just pay the fine and move on. Because sometimes, buried under all that snow, you'll find something valuable: justice, community, and the satisfaction of knowing you didn't back down when it mattered. And if you happen to know a guy with a really big plow truck, keep his number handy. You never know when you might need it.